Hey everyone, and welcome. We're diving into daily life in North Korea today.
Ooh, interesting.
And we've got a great video to unpack, right? Survivor stories, expert opinions, really the whole picture.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so much to learn. And I think it's more than just the rules, you know? It's
hmm
about, like, how do people actually live under one of the most restrictive governments?
Yeah, it's wild. Even just glancing at the source material before we started.
Right.
That satellite image of North Korea at night,
Oh, yeah.
basically a black hole compared to its neighbors,
Wow.
really puts those energy shortages into perspective.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's like, it goes beyond just the lack of electricity, you know? It's this whole control thing,
Mm.
this isolation that the government imposes. Like, they control everything. What people watch, when they sleep, everything.
It really is a world apart, and it's crazy because, the video mentions that North Korea actually had a decent economy back in the mid-20th century.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, the Soviet Union collapsing in the 90s was huge.
Yeah.
North Korea lost its main support system, like cheap oil, food, all of it.
Wow.
That's what triggered that devastating famine.
Right.
Millions died. It was awful.
Oh, the stories from that time are just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The video talks about, grandparents choosing to starve so their kids could live.
That's unbelievable.
The choices people had to make.
Yeah, and instead of, like helping people, the
Mhm.
government just tightened its grip, kept up appearances in Pyongyang while the countryside was suffering.
So let's get into this control thing, because the video really doesn't hold back, right? Only 15 approved haircuts, fashion police cutting clothes off people. Is that for show, or is there something more to it?
Well, it's about squashing any kind of self-expression, anything that doesn't fit their ideology,
Mhm.
They see Western fashion, music, all that as a threat.
Mhm.
And it's not just about how you look either.
Right. The travel restrictions are intense.
Right.
And not just leaving North Korea, even travel within the country. The story about Shin Dong-hyuk ending up in a prison camp because his uncle escaped to South Korea,
Oh, wow.
that really got to me.
It's tragic, and it shows this guilt by association thing they have.
Yeah.
Like, you're responsible for your family's actions, even generations back. It's meant to scare people into obedience.
I can see how that would make people afraid to even talk to their families.
Absolutely.
And then there's the information control. No real internet, censored phones. It's like they're frozen in time.
It's deliberate isolation and breaking the rules. The consequences are severe,
Yeah.
like prison, even death, for watching foreign movies, listening to banned music.
It really makes you appreciate the freedoms we have,
Sure.
But then the video mentions these cracks in the system, and it's like the North Korean people themselves are creating them.
Interesting.
The black markets, the Jangmadang,
Oh, the
they
Jongmadang.
sound like a lifeline.
They are. They really are. When the government failed to provide, the Jongmadang popped up. And women, they're often the driving force, They face fewer work restrictions.
So it's not just buying and selling stuff, right?
Hmm.
The video mentions people getting access to foreign media, like South Korean dramas through the Jangmadang.
Oh, huge deal.
Really?
Imagine living in this closed-off world and suddenly seeing life outside, freedoms you can't even imagine.
So a whole new reality opens up.
Yeah, it chips away at the propaganda.
Mm.
Gives people a comparison point, like, hey, what we're being told isn't the whole truth.
So it's not just survival, it's information, it's challenging the control.
Exactly.
Talk control. But the video also focuses on the Kim family and their image, right? Portraits everywhere, superhuman feats. It's almost surreal.
Oh, the personality cult.
Yeah.
It's central to their power. They're presented as almost divine,
Right.
unquestionable leadership, and they indoctrinate children from such a young age
Hmm.
to revere them, fear the outside world.
There's this one woman in the video, she got investigated because during a fire, she saved her children instead of the Kim family portraits.
Oh, wow.
What level of devotion or fear to make someone do that?
It makes you wonder how much of that devotion is real and how much is just terror, living under constant surveillance, knowing any disrespect could land you or your family in a camp.
Chilling.
Chilling.
And speaking of chilling, the video doesn't shy away from the brutality, right?
Yeah.
Forced labor, both inside and outside North Korea, seems to be a huge issue.
It's a cornerstone of their economy. It impacts everyone. Men get assigned government jobs, practically no pay, it's servitude.
Wow.
Women, they have fewer official restrictions, but they shoulder the burden of supporting their families through the Jongmadang.
The video talks about how North Korea sends citizens abroad to work, like Russia, China, even Poland and some African countries.
Right, it's a major source of income for the regime.
Mhm.
Terrible conditions, they take their wages, no freedom, it's modern slavery. And a lot of that money goes straight to their military.
It's Greek. It feels like there's no way out. But there's the Jangmadang, right? We talk about how they give people access to goods, information, stuff the government tries to control. And I'm curious to explore that more, given everything else we've learned.
Yeah, the Jongbadang, they're more than just markets.
Okay.
It's a shift in power, people taking back some control.
I can see how that would be empowering, especially in a society where freedom is so limited.
It is. They provide opportunities to make choices, connect with others, access information that challenges the government.
Mm.
And the video highlights how women are at the forefront of this,
Okay.
running markets, smuggling goods, exposing people to new ideas.
Like a quiet revolution.
Exactly. And it's not just the economic impact, it's the unity it fosters.
Right.
Shared experiences, trust, that's what the Jongbadang are building.
Imagine watching a smuggled South Korean drama, discussing news from the outside world, creating connections in a society that's been fragmented.
It undermines the regime's whole divide and rule thing. Like,
Yeah.
they're accidentally creating the conditions for change.
Powerful. And it's not just the Jangbadang, right?
Yeah.
The video mentions this rampant corruption. It's like a way of life in North Korea.
Oh, yeah. But it's not just greed.
Huh?
It's survival.
Mm.
It's how people get things done, how they navigate this system that's designed to control them.
So bribing officials isn't about getting ahead. It's about basic needs.
Exactly. People bribe teachers for education for their kids, officials for goods and services, even border guards to look the other way.
So it's a way to get around the rules, assert some agency.
Yeah, and it undermines the regime's authority, too, you know? When people see that the rules can be bent, it erodes trust.
It's like all these cracks, the Jangbadang, the smuggled USB sticks, the corruption, they're weakening the grip. But what about the outside world? What role does the international community play in all this?
That's where things get complicated, right? There are sanctions meant to pressure the regime on nuclear weapons and human rights.
But the video doesn't really say if they're working.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder about their impact on everyday North Koreans.
That's a critical point. Like, we want to hold the regime accountable, but we have to consider the consequences.
Right.
Some argue that sanctions actually hurt the people they're supposed to help without changing the regime's behavior.
It's tough. No easy answers.
Absolutely. It raises so many questions, like, how do you pressure a regime without hurting the people? Is dialogue even possible with North Korea? And how can we support those pushing for change from within?
A lot to think about, a lot of perspectives.
And that's why these conversations are so important, to dig deep and challenge our own assumptions. It's like layers upon layers, right? And the video talks about this whole songbun thing, this social classification system.
Oh yeah, songbun.
Yeah.
Like a rigid hierarchy based on your family's loyalty to the regime, and it affects everything.
Way more than just social standing. It determines where you live, your education, even who you can marry.
Wow.
It's like social engineering on a massive scale.
The video breaks it down into three classes, right? The core, they're the elite, then the wavering, viewed with suspicion, and the hostile class, the enemies of the state.
And the hostile class. They face the worst of it, denied basic necessities, forced labor, can't even live near Pyongyang.
Wait, so your family's past determines your entire future?
Pretty much.
There was this story in the video. This woman, she was sent to a prison camp just because her daughter-in-law reported her for, like, planning an escape with her son.
Oh, wow.
That's intense.
That songbun, it creates this atmosphere of constant fear, suspicion. You can't even trust your own family. The regime uses that fear to maintain control.
Okay, so we've got the threat of prison camps, songbun, and then the video also talks about this forced labor. And it's not just in the camps, right?
No, it's everywhere. For men, it's often these government jobs with almost no pay, basically indentured servitude. And while women face fewer official work restrictions, they're often forced to support their families through work in the Jangmadang.
It's like this whole system built on forced labor, and they even send people abroad, right?
Right, to Russia, China, even Poland, and some African countries. It's a big moneymaker for the regime. They send these workers abroad, take their wages, they have no freedom. It's modern slavery.
It's just awful. And to think all that money going straight to their military.
It is. It's a bleak system, but there's that glimmer of hope with the Jong Un.
Yeah, right. We were talking about how they provide access to goods, information, things the government tries to control. And I'm really curious to dive deeper into that, especially given everything else we've learned.
The Jong Un are fascinating. It's like this shift in power, people taking some control back.
I can see how that would be empowering, especially in a society like that.
It is. It's about opportunities, making choices, connecting with others, accessing information that challenges the government.
And the video highlights how women are really leading this.
Oh, yeah, they're the driving force, running markets, smuggling goods, exposing people to new ideas.
Like a quiet revolution.
Exactly. And it's not just the economic impact, it's the sense of community, the trust they're building.
Sharing those experiences.
Yeah.
Watching a smuggled South Korean drama. Discussing news from the outside. Creating connections in a place that's been so divided.
Right. And that undermines the regime's whole strategy. They're accidentally creating the conditions for change.
And it's not just the Jongwodang. The video talks about this widespread corruption. Like, it's just part of life in North Korea.
It is, but it's not just greed.
Mm.
It's about survival.
Right.
How people navigate this system that's constantly trying to control them.
So bribing officials, it's not about getting ahead. It's about meeting basic needs.
Exactly. People bribe teachers for better education, officials for access to goods and services, even border guards to look the other way.
It's like a way to work around the rules, have some agency.
It is, and it chips away at the regime's authority, too.
Yeah.
When people see that the rules can be broken, it erodes trust in the system.
Right, so you've got the Jangmadang, the smuggled USD6, the corruption. It's like these cracks are starting to show. But what about the outside world? What role does the international community play in all of this?
That's a tough one. There are sanctions, of course, aimed at pressuring the regime on nuclear weapons and human rights, but
the video doesn't really address whether they're actually working. And it makes you wonder about the impact on everyday North Koreans.
Yeah, it's a real dilemma. We want to hold the regime accountable, but we have to be mindful of the consequences. Some argue that sanctions actually harm the very people they're supposed to help without changing the regime's behavior at all.
It's a tough situation.
For sure. It is. It raises all these questions, like how do you pressure a regime without hurting the people? Can we even have a dialogue with North Korea? And how can we support those working for change from within?
It's complex, so many angles to consider.
And that's exactly why these conversations are so important, to really dive in and examine our own assumptions about the situation.
This has been, wow, a real journey. From that image of North Korea in darkness to these like little acts of resistance. It's fascinating and kind of, I don't know, makes you think.
Yeah, there's so much nuance to it. You see this resilience, but then there's this brutal regime controlling everything.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to those questions about the international community, right?
Yeah.
What can we do? How do we support the people while dealing with the regime's human rights issues and the whole nuclear thing?
Tough one, for sure. Sanctions are usually the go-to, but like we said, there are unintended consequences.
Right.
Got to make sure we're not hurting the people we're trying to help.
The video talked about information, exposure to the outside world. Do you think that could be a better way to create change?
Oh, absolutely. Information is powerful. Smuggled USB sticks, radio broadcasts, even cultural exchanges, these glimpses of a different life can really challenge the propaganda,
Yeah.
and maybe inspire people to imagine something different.
It seems like a long game, though. Is there anything more immediate we can do?
Supporting defectors and human rights activists is crucial. They're the ones risking their lives to speak out, advocate for change.
Right.
Their voices are so important. They give us insights, a different perspective from the regime's narrative.
Yeah, their stories are powerful, and it makes you realize we have to amplify those voices, push for change.
Exactly. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the whole thing, but even small actions matter. Staying informed, supporting organizations working on these issues, contacting our representatives to push for policies that prioritize diplomacy over isolation, those things add up.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway for our listeners?
The spirit of the North Korean people, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Facing such hardship, yet they find ways to connect, share information, hold on to hope. It reminds you that the human spirit is powerful even in the darkest places, that desire for freedom, a better life, it never goes away.
That's beautiful. A good reminder that even when things seem impossible, hope and informed action can make a difference. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.